A Boeing 747 jumbo jet is taxiing down the runway, ready for takeoff. The weather was worsening rapidly with each passing minute. The captain needed to get the aircraft airborne quickly. But just before they can take off, there's an unexpected danger waiting on the runway. The plane's condition deteriorated so severely that the pilot could neither take off nor reject it. So, what happens next? It's around 11 p.m. on October 31, 2000. At Taipei International Airport, Taiwan. It's been raining here for the past few hours. A typhoon was approaching the airport quickly. The weather continued to worsen with each passing minute. Despite the bad weather, a Boeing 747 jumbo jet was getting ready for takeoff. The aircraft was operated by Singapore Airlines as Flight 006. The pilot in command, 41-year-old Captain Feng Chi, had 11,235 flight hours, including 2,017 hours on Boeing 747. The co-pilot was 36-year-old Latif Serrano, who had 2,442 flight hours and 552 hours on the 747. Besides these two captains in the cockpit, there was also a relief pilot. The relief pilot's role was to assist the captain by monitoring the aircraft's instrument and controls, not to fly the aircraft. In addition to these three, there were 17 other crew members. Singapore Airlines Flight 006 was going to be a long flight. The day before, the aircraft had arrived in Taiwan from Singapore. The weather was also poor during that time. Strong crosswinds were striking the aircraft at a 90-degree angle. But despite this crosswind, the captain managed a smooth landing. It was almost 11 p.m. now. They were supposed to fly from Taiwan to Los Angeles International Airport in California, USA. A typhoon was quickly approaching the airport, getting closer each moment. The flight was set to carry 159 passengers and 20 crew members. But the storm was creating many problems, delaying passengers boarding, cargo loading, and the other small tasks. The previous day, the Singapore Airlines captain had landed the aircraft in poor weather and strong crosswinds, increasing the captain's confidence. The captain believed the aircraft could depart before the typhoon arrived at the airport. However, unexpected events were leading to a different outcome for the aircraft. To understand that, we need to know a bit more about the airport. In the 1970s, during the airport's construction, two runways were built, Runway 05 and 23, and a slightly smaller Runway 06, located in this part of the airport. Later, many operational problems began to arise. If one runway was under maintenance, the other just couldn't handle all the traffic alone. Also, the airport's central city location made expansion very difficult. Now, they've decided to build a third runway, parallel to Runway 05, and it was pretty small. The main purpose of this runway was to manage extra traffic when the airport was very busy. That's how the third runway, called 05 Right, was built. The airport authority soon realized they had made a major mistake. The runway was used very rarely, about once every 2 or 3 years. It also had a major drawback. The runway had only basic taxiway lights, not proper runway lights, so no plane could take off or land on this runway at night. Also, the runway lacked an instrument landing system, preventing landings in poor weather. The runway was also very close to the taxiway, risking a collision if two large aircrafts attempted to pass simultaneously. Only small and mid-sized planes could use it, only if the weather was perfectly clear. Overall, when we consider everything, the benefits of this runway were less compared to the negatives. So they just stopped using this runway as a runway altogether. As a result, the runway became non-functional. If an aircraft needed to depart from Runway 05 left, it could use Runway 05 right as a taxiway to reach the main runway. That's basically all it was good for. On October 3, 2000, approximately 28 days before the accident. The Taiwan Civil Aeronautics Administration announced the decommissioning of runway 05 to convert it back into a taxiway. A few days later, construction began, and demolition vehicles were placed on runway 05 right. Despite a small delay, heavy vehicles remained on runway 05 right, with a sign indicating the closure. On October 31, 2000, at 11 p.m., as Singapore Airlines Flight 006 prepared to depart from runway 05 left, construction vehicles remained parked on runway 05 right. Now, after understanding the airport situation, let's get back to our story when Singapore Airlines Flight 006 was preparing for takeoff. At that time, several other aircrafts were scheduled to depart from the airport, but because of the cyclone, the weather was getting worse. Due to these conditions, all flights were cancelled. Kaohsiung and Hong Kong airports were shut down. The captain were aware that the airport would soon close due to poor weather conditions, so he needed to take off from here as soon as possible. Due to the poor weather, even simple tasks were becoming difficult and time-consuming. Before takeoff, there's a pre-flight check. The pilot was given a chart stating that a section of runway 05 right was closed between taxiway points November 4 and November 5. But here, November 4 and 5 aren't dates, they're actually names of taxiway points. However, the rest of the runway on both sides was kept open for taxiway. Understanding all this, the pilot planned the taxi route accordingly. Although Singapore Airlines flight typically used runway 06 due to its location near the gate, ATC directed the use of runway 05 left for takeoff due to poor weather. Runway 05 left had good lightning condition, was a category 2 runway, and was sufficiently long and wide. This runway was perfect for taking off in poor visibility, especially for jumbo jets like the Boeing 747. As neither pilot has used runway 05 before, having always used runway 06, they were unfamiliar with this area of the airport. They reviewed the airport chart and planned the taxi route to navigate the aircraft to runway 05 left. According to their plan, Flight 06 was parked at gate number 5. The aircraft would be pushed back to the taxiway and move straight toward runway 05, where construction vehicles were located. Moving forward, near November 7, it will need to turn left, cross November Papa, and continued ahead until reaching November 1. After that, the plan is to turn right, cross runway 05 right, and get to runway 05 left. From there, Singapore Airlines was going to take off. The captain requested taxi clearance. ATC said, Singapore 6 taxi to runway 06 via taxiway. Correction, runway 05 left via taxiway Sierra West Cross and November Papa. The ATC's instructions were entirely different from the captain's planned taxi route. Instead of heading east, now they had to go west on a whole new route they weren't prepared for. However, the taxiway was short and a quick takeoff was necessary, so both pilots agreed to take this new route. But before that, they had to calculate the crosswind, which was 28 knots. The plane's maximum crosswind limit for takeoff was 30 knots. This meant the plane could still take off. The co-pilot stepped outside the aircraft to check the level of water on the ground. Water had accumulated around the aircraft's wheels on the ground, with some entering the co-pilot's shoes. Upon returning to the cockpit, the co-pilot asked the captain for permission to remove his shoes, but they didn't discuss how much rainwater was on the ground surface. This lack of communication was putting the aircraft at new risk, because with 28 knot crosswind, the plane could only take off if the runway was wet, that is, just a little damp. But outside, water was spread all over the surface. If there's that much water on the runway, the crosswind shouldn't be over 15 knots. But for Flight 006, the crosswind was 28 knots. This means the plane shouldn't have taken off. Also, when the plane took off from Singapore, ATIS had informed about how wet the runway was and the strength of the crosswind. The Type E Automatic Terminal Information System, ATIS, provided no details about runway conditions. Maybe the pilot thought they could take off easily since ATIS didn't say anything, meaning everything must be fine. The co-pilot failed to tell the captain that the ground had so much water it could enter shoes. The captain checked the list. There was nothing written about runway contamination. They observed the runway from cockpit and concluded that despite being slightly wet, it was safe to take off with a 28-knot crosswind. The pushback truck was summoned and moved the aircraft towards the taxiway. According to that taxiway, Flight 006 was parked at gate number 5. Slowly the plane started taxiing forward. The taxiway surface was very slippy due to water, and crosswinds were pushing the aircraft's vertical stabilizers, causing it to stray from the taxi line. To counter this, they were using the tiller. The captain remarked, "A lot of rudder work is needed here, man." The captain was struggling to keep the plane straight on taxiway. Meanwhile, the relief pilot said, "Crosswind, it's coming in. The longer the delay, the worse it is." Over there, the ATC said visibility was only 400 meters, meaning the pilot couldn't see beyond that distance. But one relief was that the green lights on the taxiway were on. The captain relied heavily on the taxiway lights, following them consistently forward. However, there was a major issue with the taxiway lighting system. At Singapore airport, the taxiway lights were set up in a way that only the lights on the taxiway the plane was supposed to take would turn on. That way the pilot wouldn't get confused or go the wrong way. ATC could control all these lights. But at the Taiwan airport, all the runway lights would turn on at the same time, so you couldn't fully trust these lights to guide you in the right direction. But the captain was completely dependent on those lights. His eyes were fixed on them. Although he also had the airport chart, so he knew where to turn. Both pilots were hoping that if they took the wrong path, the ATC would stop them. After all, ATC must have been tracking us on radar. But the reality was the exact opposite. ATC was unaware of Flight 006 location or heading at the moment. The airport lacked ground radar to determine the position of aircraft or vehicles on the ground. The ATC only knows when the pilot tells them their position. They can't just look outside because the visibility was only 400 meters. Beyond that, they couldn't see anything. This means if the plane turns the wrong way, no one would notice. Slowly, the plane started moving toward the parallel taxiway near runway 05 right. But to take off, the plane had to follow another rule. Basically, whenever a plane flies in bad weather, it needs to be able to land at nearby airports quickly in an emergency. But Kaohsiung and Hong Kong airports around Taiwan were already closed because of the cyclone. The captain said that if we face any emergency after takeoff, we'd land back at our own airport. After all, this place has a Category 2 runway, which allows landing even in low visibility. But doing that was also risky, because if the airport gets shut down right after takeoff, Flight 006 wouldn't have any nearby airport left to land at in an emergency. That's why the decision was pretty risky. But still the captain stuck to it and kept moving towards the runway to take off. The weather was getting worse by the minute, so the captain asked the relief pilot one last time to calculate the crosswind. Meanwhile, the plane started moving down November Papa Road. The tower instructed them to hold near runway 05 left. Notably, ATC never referred runway 05 right in their instructions. They should have told them to cross runway 05 right before holding at runway 05 left. The plane kept moving forward. Meanwhile, the pilots activated their respective PVDs. PVD or Para-Visual Display is an optional feature on the Boeing 747, used by only a few airlines. These two displays are located at the corner right in the front of the pilots. Their simple job is to use the runway localizer signal to determine if the plane is properly aligned with the runway. Slowly, the plane started turning towards right. At this point, both pilots began discussing why the PVD hadn't been turned on yet. Then the relief pilot from the back said, "We gotta line up first. We need 45 degrees, as only then the PVD will activate." The captain thought, yeah, that makes sense. Maybe the localizer signal isn't being picked up by the PVD. And after getting closer to runway 05 left, the PVD will turn on. Now the plane was lined up with the runway, but the PVD still didn't activate. Now the pilots thought we are lined up straight with the runway and we can even see the runway lights. So why is the PVD still not showing the plane's position? Here the captain said, "Never mind, we can see the runway, not so bad." Actually, PVD wasn't malfunctioning here. The issue was that they ended up on the wrong runway. They were supposed to go to runway 05 left, but they went to runway 05 right instead, where the construction vehicles were parked. But the biggest question is, how did the pilot end up on the wrong runway? Everything is clearly marked on the airport chart. Even according to the flight plan, they were supposed to go to runway on the left side. So how did they end up on the right side runway? Behind this was a huge oversight and poor maintenance. See, at Singapore airport, the taxiway lights only come on for the runway that the plane is supposed to use. All the other lights stay off. Both pilots were aware of this. But when the plane veered right to go towards runway 05 left, there should have been at least 16 lights there. The problem was, this airport only had 4 lights in that spot. And out of those 4, the first was blown. And the second light's intensity was so low that in bad weather, it wasn't even visible. Meanwhile, the runway on the right side, where the plane wasn't supposed to go, had plenty of lights, bright and shiny, right facing them. Here we can understand that 2 pilots unfamiliar with these runways, following the taxiway lights straight ahead, would naturally focus more on the well-lit runway on the right. On top of that, the pilots were occupied with controlling and monitoring the aircraft system. All the pilots were dealing with so much stress at once, and all of this had to be done in just a few seconds. That's when the captain messed up. He was supposed to go to runway on the left side, but accidentally went to the runway on the right side. After so many mistakes, the plane was ready to crash. The pilots inside still thought ATC was watching everything on their radar. ATC didn't raise any objections. That meant we were on the right track. But the problem was the airport didn't have ground radar, due to which ATC didn't know anything at all. The pilots, overly confident, ignored multiple signs warning of approaching danger. Even Category 2 runway were fully lit up with lights. But Flight 006 only had basic taxi lights in front of them. Still, they didn't notice. All 4 powerful engines of the Boeing 747 were throttled up, and the jumbo jet started roaring forward, cutting through the air. The pilots were occupied with controlling and monitoring the aircraft system. Suddenly, through the fog, solid iron vehicles appeared. It all happened so fast that there was no time to think or react. The captain said, "Something's there." Right after the plane crashed into those iron vehicles, out of 179 people on board, 96 managed to escape the fire. Firefighters' trucks arrived in just a few minutes, but it took an hour to put out the fire completely. The injured who couldn't move got caught in the fire and were silenced forever. While the rescue team helplessly watched everything unfold, no single person was to blame for this accident. There was no ground radar at the airport. The ATC didn't give clear instructions. The lights fuse blew out. The number of lights were reduced. Vehicles were left there even after the construction work was postponed. And there was no report on water contamination. On top of that, pilot error was also a factor. They didn't pay close enough attention to the cockpit instruments. Singapore Airlines' image took a big hit because of all this, as until now, no Singapore Airlines plane had ever crashed, and it was considered the safest plane in the world. But that record was broken after this crash. Today, runway 05 is turned into a taxiway. Now the airport has 2 runways. The runway lights were fixed and ILS was installed. Additionally, all 3 surviving pilots were dismissed as they failed to properly monitor the instruments, contributing to the major accident. So for now, that's all for this video. If you liked the video, give it a like. If not, feel free to dislike. Either way, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more informative content. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep watching and keep learning.